back when I hire caregivers, if they've lived out of state, it can take a long time, and that's just for caregivers. So I take a long.
We are live streaming and the recording will start, Mayor.
Okay. I will now call the May 13th City Council meeting to order at 6:10 p.m. Tonight's meeting is being recorded and live streamed. Please make sure your microphone is on and you're speaking into the mic so that everyone can hear us. First agenda item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilor Smith, will you lead tonight, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Tammy, would you do roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor Bell,
Here.
Councilor Bowman,
Here.
Councilor Engelbretson,
Here.
Councilor Lyman,
Here.
Councilor Myers,
Here.
Councilor Smith,
Here.
and Councilor Wells.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is mayor's comments. I will keep it brief. I did want to let you know that I attended League of Oregon Cities meeting last Friday. And it was great to meet other leaders, council members, and mayors from various cities around the region. One of the things that struck me coming just out of our budget meetings and really looking at the budget and making some hard decisions is that we're not the only ones. And one of the statistics, as we've heard on the news, Portland has a $90 million deficit. Salem has a $20+ million deficit. Eugene has, I thought it was $30 million, but they said 11 at the meeting. Springfield, I saw on the news last night, has a $3 million deficit. So, you know, all being said, we're in good shape. We do not have a deficit, but I think that it's going to be incumbent upon us as council members this year and staff to make some very difficult and strategic decisions as we move forward. So that's really about all I wanted to say. I think then the next LOC meeting, president's meeting, is in August, and I believe that's going to be here in Coburg. We have a couple of them that will be here in Coburg. So we'll get those dates out to you, and certainly if you're available, we'd want you to come. It is for council members and staff. There were several city administrators there. One of the things that was a common theme with everybody, all of the attendees at that meeting, was that we really need to be educating our community members in terms of where our revenue comes from, how we spend the money, how those decisions are made. Because was Halsey, the city administrator from Halsey, was there. Halsey does not get any portion of property tax into the city budget. I don't know why that is. He didn't know why that was. It's just the way it is. He said he has talked to many community members there and has said, you know, we don't get any portion of the property tax. And to a person, they have said, well, of course you do, because I pay property taxes. So certainly you must get property tax. Well, they don't. We do, but the amount that we get, if we look at our property tax statements, the amount that actually goes to the city is relatively small. In fact, I would say very small. We need to be able to discuss that and we need to be able to speak with one voice. So we're going to be doing a lot of hard work to try and come up with some talking points so that everybody is clear in terms of what we're saying and have a consistent. So that's it. I don't want to be Debbie Downer tonight. I'm certainly not, and I'm very proud of the work that was done to put together a budget. I know that it was not easy for staff. It was not easy for any of us on budget committee to be looking at. And I know that we'll make the right decisions. So, next agenda item is agenda review. Sammy, are there any proposed changes to the agenda?
We don't. You guys all had one, the city administrator report, so that falls underneath agenda item 8. Should have been right at your seats, but that was it for tonight.
And is there anyone signed up to provide public comment?
There is not.
Well, and you'll be really excited. The next item is the consent agenda. And in the consent agenda, we have the minutes for April 8th City Council meeting and the budget committee, council consent of budget committee appointees. The following agenda item is the approval of the consent agenda, and any item in the consent agenda can be removed if need be or amended. Are there any requests for removal or amendment? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to present the consent agenda. I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second that.
Counselor Bowman. We have a motion by Counselor Smith and a second by Counselor Bowman to approve the consent agenda without amendment. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved without any amendments. That's the April 8th City Council minutes and the consent to appoint 2 budget committee members. And I will now appoint Ed and Angela Whitty to the budget committee for a 3-year term. Those will be starting July 1st of 2025 and will extend through June 30th of 2028. Thank you very much. Next agenda item is public hearing, first reading of ordinance A257, an ordinance establishing a parks and open space maintenance support fee. I will now open the public hearing at 6:18 and hold the first reading of ordinance A257. An ordinance establishing a parks and public open space maintenance support fee. Staff report by Mr. Hanks.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I'll go through real quickly what's the items in the packet that relate to this agenda item, and we do have a PowerPoint that I'll try and use to help step through this. Obviously, the staff report kind of goes into some of the background of the fee and the prior discussions that we've had about both general fund fees, general fund revenue in general, as well as this specific proposed fee. What is also then, as the mayor noted, this is first reading of the ordinance. So behind the staff report is the draft ordinance. It is modeled very similar with the tree fee ordinance, which is a very similar type of fee on the utility bills that's been in place here in Coburg for a number of years. 2008, I believe. Also then after the draft ordinance is the, a document that, council has seen several times is the, council, revenue subcommittee, phase 2 recommendations, which relate to this proposed fee. So that's, in there, as well as a draft handout or a draft, community, communications document on proposed revenue enhancements. There's 2 of them. The second one is the 2025 utility rate adjustments that obviously did go out prior when we approved the utility rate increases. The one that has not been released and used yet for the public, we can talk about as we get further along in this conversation, is the proposed revenue enhancements. That is the draft that we did talk about. I made some amendments. I think Councilor Wells had some suggestions for an amendment to that form when we talked about it last. So those are the documents that go along with tonight's discussion. And I will, should I steal the keyboard?
I could bring it.
Oh, I can.
It can't be 2 places at once.
This sort of loosely takes us through it, but it's obviously wide open for conversation as we go. So this one is probably going to be a slide that everybody gets tired of. I've used it a bunch already. Just a tone setter for this follows up with the mayor's comments in the opening. You know, our goal as we move forward in everything that we've been doing is really our financial stewardship, and that's, you know, moving from survivability to sustainability on to resiliency. And we're, you know, I guess my take would be is that we're somewhere north of survivability, but not at that sustainable spot. So we're in that gray, literal gray area between survivability and sustainability on that slide. And the goal longer term is resiliency. And that really, the definition of resiliency is really solid, strong fund balances across the board, and good credit ratings, ability to cover all of our debt service covenants and all of that, and really including having some sort of a reserve fund. That's maybe right now sounds aspirational, but that's really the objective. And it takes multiple years. It's not a 1-year fix at all. My take probably, if we follow the mayor's advice, making smart strategy decisions and disciplined financial decisions, you know, that's a 4 to 6 year thing to get close, you know, really close to that edge of that resiliency part of the arrow. So the next one is another slide I showed this at the budget committee, and we've had this in front of council before. This really kind of shows, I think this is not quite a pat on the back collectively for all of us, but it's showing that we're keeping up with what we said we were going to do after last year's budget. So I think it was the July meeting last year, after the budget was approved in June, that was when the concept of the revenue options subcommittee was agreed upon. And then I believe we took August off. So September, the members were appointed, and then October, that subcommittee started meeting. And so this timeline takes off a little bit after that, after the phase 1 recommendations from the subcommittee were presented to council, and that first square represents the utility rate increases that happened between December and February. So moving on to the yellow dot or the yellow square, that's where we are right now. We're at the tail end of that spot. That arrow between the yellow square and the blue square is really exactly where we are, which is taking the subcommittee's phase 2 recommendations that had general fund focused conversations. And that memo is in the packet, and that's tonight's ordinance and discussion about a parks and open space maintenance support fee. The next dot there, the next square, is where we'll jump after this round. This fee discussion has completed, and that'll be in July, where we'll jump into some of the meatier, longer range, bigger, maybe more challenging or difficult to implement revenues that are out there, or at least evaluate a deeper dive on evaluating those and deciding whether council wants to move forward or not. And then as it moves down and makes its turn, it makes its way towards if the decision or the direction is to move forward on anything that takes a ballot measure, a vote of the people, that we have to work backwards from that green dot, which is an election or a ballot measure, a voting period there. And that is 3+ months back is when we have to make that decision to be able to get everything to the county and in place. So it really isn't a long timeline to really, dive into some of the other things after tonight's conversation. So, but I really liked when I looked at it and said, everybody stayed on track and we're doing what we said last year when the budget got approved and implemented. We're doing what we said. This is another slide that came somewhere in the winter this year, I think before the utility rates. I highlighted the yellow there is the general fund. These are the kind of the scary graph that shows all fund balances trending down. Those I would caution that some of our out years aren't as accurate as the close in years. So that we can't look that bad, right? So we have to do something before it looks like that. That's a trajectory that if things are all the same and we don't do anything differently, that's what will occur. The general fund has a stable and then just a consistent angled drop, and that really is what we've said over and over again is revenues rise at 3 to 5% in the general fund and expenses rise 10 to 15% in the general fund. And that leaves a delta that eats away our fund balances. That's really the simple math of it. And we have to do something to change that either by significant expenditure reduction or revenue enhancement, and likely it's a combination of the two. And we've done that already. Some in the proposed budget through the budget committee is slimming down staffing numbers in the general fund. So just to recap on revenues in the general fund before we get into the fee specifically, the highlighted item is where the proposed fee that we're talking about tonight resides in the budget. That's why that is a hefty increase from FY25 to 26. That represents the inclusion of the park and open space fee. Should council not want to do that, we back that revenue off, and then we also determine where the expense side gets adjusted to balance the top and the bottom of the charts between revenue and expense. But that's just where that would reside in our accounting of that, and just a reminder that it already is in the proposed budget. So just a recap of parks, just before we get into how we fund it, just what it's doing and what elements it has. And this was from the budget slides. I stole a few just to set the tone for tonight. Staff resources, it's a little less in the field work. It's a little less than 1 FTE. And then we have some admin parts. So in total, between a number of different parts of people, the budgetary full FTE is full-time equivalent is that we actually charge to the Parks Department is really a 1.0. That's probably 4 or 5 or 6 people at any one time, but that's its budget allocation. Personnel expenses, you see there, we've reduced. We adjusted some of the staffing now that's primarily with Public Works Director not being shown there. I'm doing the Park and Tree Committee, trying to manage the kind of the upper end of the projects. There is no leaving Brian out of the operational side, so that is still a challenge. But we've allocated where existing general fund staffing on the management side is managing the parks program, and then we have the field work. Budgetary changes, as we all know, Pavilion Park, which has been a great project, but a challenging one from a budgetary standpoint, is almost done. It looks awesome. that will be complete this year. We will be able to give council an update on the full financials of that. Probably July. We may not have all the invoices from the contractors in time for the June. I was hopeful, but we'll probably have all of that wrapped up and be able to give a full accounting of that project in July and see how much we use beyond the grant. Primary activities that we're talking about tonight, that this fee would in large part be dedicated to support. It wouldn't pay for completely. Mowing, facilities cleaning, repair, safety inspections on our playgrounds. We just worked with CIS this last week and got a report on things. There are a couple, we got glowing marks, mostly all greens. There was 2 small little reds in there that will easily be cleaned up. It was a great inspection just this week on all of our active park facilities, the playground equipment and all that stuff. Parks revenues, as we say, this fee would be proposed 40 to 45,000. We'll get into the kind of the reason why there's a range there, and then other very small revenues associated with facilities rentals. And aside from that, currently the general fund revenues fund all of parks, as is the case in most cities, and many cities around the state are wrestling with the same exact fee type and structure. I know my former city that I can't quite get out of my DNA and still pay attention to them. They're wrestling of went from $9 that got voted no, $9 a month, went to $5 that got to $6.50 is where they're landing, and they're trying to do that just to maintain some flat levels of service. So that probably, if you read a little bit of Ashland stuff, that's repeated in maybe dozens of cities around that are either doing what we're talking about tonight for parks or for police public safety. Eugene's public safety is more on the fire side, but it's the same concept.
I believe Bend also was doing exactly
significant
the same thing.
Yep, exactly.
Larger cities, but not huge cities.
Right.
All looking at.
Yep, and many cities have put them in place, and now they're really dialing them and deciding, what is the right level. We can talk about that too. The methodology of what percent of a operating department should come from fees versus come from the general fund, from everyone, right? So everyone differently. So the future needs, it's not without its needs, but we're really focusing right now on how do we have a basic service level maintenance. So this is a operations and maintenance conversation tonight. It's not a capital conversation. So the proposed fee. So this gets into the meat of tonight's conversation. The fee is actually established and authorized by ordinance, and that's the draft document that we're here looking at tonight. The fee amount will be set by resolution, so that would coincide with the second reading of the ordinance next month. So you will have a second reading of the ordinance with whatever adjustments you're interested in. And a resolution that actually sets the fee, and that's consistent with our other fees and not having fees stuck in the ordinance world. Fees should be able to be adopted by resolution. I tried these arrows differently, so this is intended to snake its way down. I'm not sure if that makes any sense at all. It did on my screen at my desk, but it looks really weird now. It's supposed to, okay, so you go down, July 1 implementation, 40 to 50,000 in revenue, and it's a per unit fee, which actually the tree fee is as well. It's not a per account. So if there's an account that has a fourplex, it's 4 times whatever the fee is, and the tree fee is set up the exact same way. So it is more than just $5 multiplied by the number of accounts we have. It's $5 multiplied by the number of units, either business or residential. And we're making some adjustments and auditing the tree fee to make sure that we're charging that the way the ordinance describes it as well. So that's where there's a range right now. And obviously, as we get additional customers, that total annual revenue sneaks up a little bit. So moving across back to the left, and it's equivalent right now of about 38 to 40% of the operating budget of the slightly reduced operating budget that is proposed for this year. I noted that, I think a smart target that a range of a target that we probably would want to look at a kind of a utility fee for parks maintenance to be somewhere between a third and a half of its total budget. That's not anything that we have to land on, and that's more of a policy conversation. But I think that's something just to, when we talk about the actual amount of the fee relative to the cost, operating cost, not capital, again, operating, that a fee probably makes sense to be somewhere in that third to half. For it to be all, we can give you next month, we can give you what it would be for a third, half, and all. And that's just good food for thought. But I think that's a landing spot, I think, or at least a target zone. And moving down right below that, the way the ordinance and resolution will reinforce is that it would be, while all revenue of this type, this category of revenue is general fund revenue, it would be in the general fund, as I showed on a prior slide. It would be restricted for its use to operation and maintenance within the Parks Department budget. Same thing with the tree fee. The tree fee goes into the street fund, but it is further restricted voluntarily by the council to be used only for street tree related expenses. Same model applies. And then as talked about in this, the revenue subcommittee, and we've talked about it at the council here, is having all of our fees have a CPI index for annual adjustments to try to keep up with that delta I described earlier, that as costs go up, the fee on a CPI just rises each year. That is, I think in one sense, it's frustrating on the customer side to every year see an adjustment, but what it avoids is flat spike, flat spike, which is a tough way of doing business as well. So this one is kind of a post conversation of the discussion of the fees. So I might leave that one. That's the other things. And I could dive into it now if we want. I could maybe hit the highlights, but this clearly isn't the only thing that we should be doing. And some of the items on this slide include additional similar revenues, public safety support fee, an identical system that would be dedicated to police. We talked about our building program, our intergovernmental agreement. I think we have an opportunity to go back with that group that we're with and see if we can adjust that. That is rather expensive for the volume of building activity we currently have. There's some reasons why, but that I understand from the provider side, but I think there's opportunities there. An IGA for parks maintenance, unknown if there's actual cost savings for one, but we don't know until we poke at it. And then the second part is don't know either if there's willing partners to take on an IGA to do that. But also same thing, we don't know unless we poke at it and see. That's something that may be useful for us. It may not. Already talked a little bit about the local option levy. That's kind of phase 3 of the revenue subcommittee. We'll be talking about that July, August, September. I mentioned last month or the month before City Hall. That's a longer play. There is some equity in this building. An early preliminary, fairly subjective opinion of mine is that it's bigger than it needs to be. And maybe we can do something that improves the numbers on our part and maybe also spurs some larger economic development project that we are a tenant of, or that we are a participant in something that is a mixed use development, something that brings housing, that brings, added property tax base, other things. And again, it's not a this coming year solution, but it's definitely, we do have debt service associated with this building that's in the general fund. If we erase that, that's equivalent to about a $4 a month fee on a utility bill, about $3.50 to $4. So it's not nothing when we start talking about the range of what really starts turning the trajectory. The good part of a relatively skinny general fund is that it also doesn't take much to turn it in the right direction. So there's the positive, there's the no Debbie Downer part. And then again, a really small one, but it's kind of due anyway, regardless of the financials. But I think it'd behoove us to be thinking about the IOF lease. That's general fund money. We're currently using lodging tax kind of restricted money for that. It probably is eligible use. But we should be thinking about what's our long-term role in that building, and that, and I don't know if that interacts with the city hall bullet or not. Who knows? But anyway, those are general fund things that I thought were important to say that we need to be approaching regardless of your decision tonight and next meeting about this parks and open space fee. There are other things that we need to be digging into. So that's the next one. As I mentioned, the actual ordinance itself for first reading is very, very similar in nature to the tree fee. So I think that's helpful for us administratively.
That is page 11.
Thank you.
For any of you that need to find it in your packet. Background.
Yeah, the staff report, and then the ordinance itself starts on 14. It has some definitions about what our open space parks and open space system is, similar, identical kind of definitions in terms of administrating fees. We would like to not have wildly different administrative structures for how we implement them. The utility billing system can get complicated enough, even with them being consistent, let alone if they're different. I think that just stepping through the imposition of the fee, I see one that says surcharge. When it comes back for second reading, there may be a couple scriveners. Noted that the amount is actually resolution, how the funds are dedicated, effective dates, and how the billing part works, and then the appeals. And then there is, which actually relates to a future item on tonight's meeting, is the financial hardship language to make sure that ties in with our limited income program, which this does the same way the tree fee does. We can talk about that when we hit that other agenda item. So that's really the nuts and bolts here. And again, the amount of the fee, which is in the recommendation from the subcommittee, was $5 a month. I would add that was done in February and March. That was before we put the budget together. I would say that maybe it was, I was thinking it may not, we may be turning around the general fund in this year quicker than we actually did. So I would say that it's 5 would be from my staff recommendation. Now it maybe would have, if I go back to February, maybe I'd push and prod for a little bit more than a $5 fee. But $5 turns it back the right direction. The other component that we're really not talking about tonight would be next month is the increase of the tree fee. That was the other component of the subcommittee's recommendation, going from a $2 fee to a $4 fee. That's in the street fund, so it's not a general fund revenue enhancement. Maybe food for thought between this meeting and the June meeting is when we are looking at prioritization of our financial picture, the street fund and trees in particular may or may not be as dire as the needs in the general fund. So I'd leave the members of the subcommittee that can talk about it either tonight or next meeting of whether, a revising of that to say, in light of everything, 7 is still a good total number, but it should all go to the general fund, or 6 and 1, or 5 and 2 is right. We have a, important responsibility to the street trees as well, and we need to handle those appropriately. I still think the original recommendation is solid. I do think the general fund condition is a little worse than I was predicting it would be, 4 months prior. Not huge, but I would probably lean towards, if we are, if council is thinking about the rate increases, that really kind of in your discussion and your decisions amongst yourself about what is the general fund financial situation and parks relative to a little more limited, but still very important, to the community, the trees and funding for that. That is what we don't get, what we're short on when we run out of funds that the tree fee itself provides. That's backstopped by the street fund. So we do have a source that when we go over that amount of roughly 18 to 20,000 a year, we don't all years, but some years we do. And when those years do happen, the street fund which is an appropriate place, the street fund kind of sucks up that difference. The idea with adding $2 to the tree fee was to try and bolster that and ensure that the rest of the street fund that's used for other things doesn't function as a backstop to that. But comparing the two, it's a comparison that I think is a good discussion for you all, and I think there isn't necessarily a wrong way to allocate them. They're still very important both, and they're both trees come up regularly to Brian and to us at City Hall about needs relating to trees. But we handle them in a lot of different ways. We handle some of them through our capital projects as well. So I guess I would slightly lean, the staff recommendation over to maybe beefing up the $5 a little more. But again, decisions on that in June, but discussions on that would be handy. So when we put a draft resolution together, we're hitting the mark as best we can.
We have a little homework between now and our meeting.
Yeah, a little thinking about, kind of that, the prioritization between, areas that all need financial resources.
I have a question. It might be helpful. I know years ago our trees were in deplorable shape and it was a huge issue. And if it doesn't take Public Works too much time, it might be nice to have sort of a general overview of the condition of the trees, maybe, how many are extremely hazardous that have to be dealt with in the next couple of years, or, just a ballpark idea,
inventory.
kind of a tree inventory can take, I know, a lot of time, but Public Works has a pretty good idea. I think it might be helpful to have some feedback as to.
We could probably do some anecdotal style. I don't think doing anything
Yeah.
objective would be able to be done between now and next meeting. And those are risk management type questions about, how bad is bad? Is it going to go? Is it one that if it goes, it's going to hit something or it's going to hit the ground? Those are decisions that, and really some of those, while our team has a good awareness generally of trees, really those kind of evaluations really do require the arborist. They see things that we don't. They know things about different trees that we don't. It'd be hard to put something together between it. We've looked at, I've got myself familiar with the prior inventories and weather, if we have big winds and big ice, more stuff drops than if we don't. So I'm not sure of a fair weather look at the trees give us a whole lot. But we do have some trees, one that's really in bad shape that would need to go, that will actually end up happening with the Collector Street project that wouldn't be part of the tree fee. So, there are ways that we address some of those. And then, major pruning versus removal, we rely on the arborist to kind of help us decide, do we limp something along for, 500 to 1,000 or say that's just, you're just asking for it and it's time for it to go at 5,000 or 6,000.
And maybe just a more long-term request that
Yeah.
as Public Works works with the arborist, that those things are, that we have somewhat of a record, so we have some idea of what we are looking at.
Yep, and that is in our framework document. So it was one that we had listed as a priority 3, but it's in there. Vegetation management plan was above it. The tree management, and we have put in, although the funding sources are now gone, but we had prepped for a mitigation grant through a BRIC grant through FEMA, but that's no longer. So we do have some information about what we think it would take to turn the corner, be more proactive than reactive. I think it's probably fair to say that even adding $2 to the tree fee still keeps us in pretty much a reactive mode. It just means that fee is enough that it is unlikely that the street fund would have to augment, from the other revenue streams would have to augment that. Is really probably what the effect of that additional $2 is.
Unfortunately, we all know trees are rather unpredictable. Big limbs can come down that we didn't expect.
Yeah.
Our trees can go over that we didn't expect.
But
I think
updating that
the trees,
definitely.
they're not as
Yep.
predictable as they were a few years ago.
Yeah.
It was pretty
Larry,
scary.
you have a question for staff?
Yeah, either comment or observation, speaking of trees and the condition of trees. So we go around the corner here towards the fire station, there's 9 trees in the right of way. 7 of them are dead, been dead for 2 years. I think they got replaced once. I don't know if it's the county's responsibility for that or if that's the city's.
The little ones in the park row.
6 to 8 feet tall.
Yeah. Yeah, the challenge with those, we've talked to the Park and Tree Committee. One is still fighting. One is still making it sort of. There's no irrigation, and I think that's the inherent challenge. Is it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to replace them without a better means of irrigating. The large conifers on the other side, that is. Those are a different story. We have to prune those, limb them up a little bit, and they are heavy. When they go down, they're problematic. But yeah, the ones, Brian and I have definitely chatted about those, and at some point this year, those will, we might leave the little Charlie Brown tree and see what happens. But maybe, I don't know. I don't know if it's torturous. Yeah,
Bring it home
I
with
know.
somebody.
It might be torture to leave it there, but
But
that.
Die Hard or something.
Right. But the answer to the question on the jurisdictional thing, those are ours. That is our
And
responsibility.
then on the, did this revenue subcommittee speak to increasing rental fees for usage of parks for special events?
No, not specifically. We talked about kind of the scale of that as a revenue stream compared to the other, compared to the needs. Park and Tree has talked about that as recently as last month. Those are, I know that's come up. I know that you've raised that one before. Those are definitely something that are worth looking at. They come with expenses to admin and maintain and serve the events. So I would say from a scale perspective, what they would net revenue, the general fund is pretty limited, because the venues aren't of a nature where they kind of bring a high price or a surcharge. And we do have many events going on already on the calendar. Most of them are community events. So the availability of the venues is probably pretty sporadic and limited. So it to me on its surface without digging in, and we can and will, I think Park and Tree is, Councillor Smith has talked with, kind of doing some peer review of other similar venues in the region to see what they're charging, just kind of get an inventory, making sure that they have the same assets. That is when it nets, it's not nothing, but it's not in the range of the things that I was putting on that slide.
And just to add to what Adam said, we already do have rental we already do rent those spaces. And so what Parks and Tree, one of the questions from one of the committee members was to look at not implementing anything new, but increasing the price of what we're already charging.
That was my question.
Because all of those, the shelter and the parks already do get rented and reserved for events. They're looking at it.
They just don't come without a staff cost, admin
Right.
plus public works staffing. Not that that's a bad thing, but they, those come along with those, and then raising them to a point that they don't get reserved and used means that we lose all the revenue. So there is that balance of what you at a certain price point, we may shoot ourselves in the foot, but I don't know the market. I don't know the market.
Wedding venues and receptions and things, and what was talked about last year, someone had a wedding.
Again, I think we're comparing apples and oranges on the venues and I will, it sounds like it's already being looked at, so we'll
Yep.
defer to that. Counselor Bowman.
I have two sort of competing observations with regard to ordinances of this nature. And I want to be very clear that I understand why we might feel that this is necessary when we look at our fiscal position. I understand that it is necessary to keep these things up and to do what we need to do in that regard. And I think that is a legitimate school of thought. On the other hand, I worry that in 2 or 3 years' time, we will be back here having the same discussion, amending the resolution, 2 or 3 more times and still be in this position. And I do worry about that because it's like death by 1,000 cuts for us because we have to be the bad guy. So we either need to set it high enough out of the gate so we have a little breathing space, which is not going to be pleasant for the taxpayer, or I think we need to just honestly evaluate what other paths we have. If we do, I'm not saying we do, I'm just saying that is part of the calculus here.
And I think that's our homework between this meeting and next meeting when we actually have the rate discussion.
Well, I think I want the public to understand that this is one of the most difficult things that can come in front of us because we have to pay the bills too. We all live here. That's a consequence of living where you work.
It's a decision to be a bad guy or a villain.
Right.
These are not, as I said in the mayor's comments, we are going to have to make difficult decisions and we are going to have to weigh them and we are going to have to be able to explain them and we are going to have to be able to speak with one voice and understand what our options are. So I certainly don't want to negate anything that anyone is saying or feeling at this point. I think we're all saying and feeling the same thing. But we do have to look at revenue or we have to look at cutting services. There sort of isn't any in between there. And that either choice is going to be a difficult choice. But it's one we are going to have to grapple with.
So Mayor, maybe I respond to that and then maybe make sure that we're back on track with our public hearing part. So questions and then deliberation. But just for clarity, as I said in the utility rates conversation, it is highly likely, probably nearly guaranteed that that yes, this ordinance would not be put in place and then sits there at $5. There just is no way to maintain the existing service levels, not bring in any new service levels at all. Not even talking about the cost associated with the new park that isn't developed yet. It will require to change the trajectory of 3 to 5% increase in revenue and 10 to 15% increase in expense. That growing piece requires either the expense to come down or the revenue to come up, and they have to match by law. And we have been using the cushion. They haven't matched, but by law, we've been okay because there's a fund balance that we've been tapping. And we are out of room to tap that fund balance. And they're really, and I don't love saying this all the time, but it is, we get to the spot where you legally can't not say yes to more revenue. I mean, we're not there, but we are reaching a point where there is no legal way to say no on, we're not going to raise revenues. That's starting to make its way around the state. We're seeing people, there's the city of North Bend had an interesting problem that they're trying to get fixed with the legislature because the community said no, and they're regulated to provide things. So it really is it's a dicey one, and it's tough. I totally understand that it's tough. But I do want to be transparent that almost every year we're going to be talking about the need to raise revenue because the costs continue to rise at a pace that's outside of our control for the most part, unless the only part inside of our control is reduce service levels. So, and then we can get back to whatever the next, if we're ready for testimony.
Are there any other questions from council? Questions? No? Do we have any written testimony, or is anyone signed up to provide comment?
We do not.
If there's no further testimony or questions, I will close the public hearing at 7 o'clock. Thank you. And we need a motion to approve the first reading. I will entertain that motion at this time. Ordinance A-257.
Mayor, I move to approve the first reading of ordinance A-275 titled "An Ordinance Establishing a Parks and Public Open Space Maintenance Support Fee," and move the ordinance to a second reading for final review and adoption.
Second.
We have a motion by Councillor Myers and a second by Councillor Bowman to approve the first reading of ordinance A-257. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. The first reading of ordinance A-257 is approved, and the second reading is scheduled for June 10th, 2025 at the city council meeting.
Did Councillor Wells vote? I didn't.
I believe he did.
He did vote
Yes.
in favor. Yes.
So that was a unanimous vote.
Okay, I was just checking because I didn't hear it. So
Nope, I voted.
okay, just making sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are
We
crossed.
got it. And we have another public. This is on resolution 2025-08. Resolution certifying the city of Coburn's eligibility and election to receive state shared revenues for fiscal year 25-26. I will now open the public hearing at 7:02. Staff report from Mr. Hanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this one is part two of a two public hearing required process that the state has established to accept state revenue sharing funds, and it happens every year around this time. The first public hearing was done and as required by the Budget Committee, and that public hearing is to allow people to provide testimony about what they think the funds might be good to spend on or to use for. And then this hearing is to certify that that we, the council, the final decision-making body, certify that we are both eligible and want to receive them. And it's sort of a bit of a rubber stamp process at this point that I don't know of a council that would choose not to receive them. Maybe that happened in the past, but the three of the four revenue sharing components are revenue to the general fund. One, the largest, is to the street fund, so the highway trust fund revenues. Those are the those are the state gas tax, it's a apportionment process. And then in the general fund is cigarette tax, liquor, and then the state shared revenues, a kind of a amalgamation of others. Cigarette tax was just in the news. I don't know if any, just as a total aside, but it has been declining in giant over the last 3 years, which is of course the intent. The rate of the tax went up about 3 years ago, either 21 or 22, with the whole idea of making it cost more. And then the majority of the revenues from that tax are for health-related prevention and stop smoking stuff. But the cities do get a portion there. But as you see for ours, it's declining rapidly in every city's budget, and that's another one of those that's a bummer from a revenue standpoint, but it's doing what it's supposed to be doing at a policy level.
This goes into the general fund.
Those three do. So that 51,000, those go to the general fund. So page 2 of the staff report has the breakout between them. The street fund, the just under 120,000, that goes that goes in the street fund. One of our 4 pretty diversified revenues in the street fund.
Are there any questions of staff about this? Okay. And if not, I will entertain a motion to approve.
Check for public testimony.
Oh, sorry. Is there any public testimony?
There's not.
Okay, thank you. I missed that and I appreciate that reminder. So at this point, I will entertain a motion.
Mayor, we need to close the public hearing.
Okay, sorry. I'm trying to follow the script here and I apparently am not doing a very good job of that. I will close the public hearing at 7:06. Thank you.
No, third time
Now,
lucky.
third time around. Is there, if there are no further questions or testimony, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve resolution 2025-08.
Hold on.
Oh, is it 08 or 09?
It's 08.
09. Oh, I'm sorry.
08.
08.
08.
I'm
Yes, I
sorry.
got it right. Good.
Yes. We have a motion by Counselor Bowman. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And we have a second by Counselor Engebretson to approve resolution 2025-08, certifying the city of Coburg's eligibility and election to receive state shared revenues for fiscal year 2025-26. Is there any council debate? Hearing none. I will, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? And the motion passes unanimously 6-0. Thank you. Now we have the resolution 2025-09, a resolution adopting the policy and criteria for limited income assistance. And we will again have a staff report from Mr. Hanks.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an item that Sammy Egbert, our city recorder, and I did kind of together. She did the bulk of the work. She administers the program through our utility billing team.
Thank you.
This resolution really memorializes, well, it actually, it memorializes what we have been doing as allowed by ordinance. It began with the water utility ordinance and then was added when sewer came on, that was added. And then other resolutions and ordinances for the tree fee and the TUF all came along. The tree fee ordinance, which the park and open space fee that we just discussed, has a little bit different wording for it, but we've analyzed all of how it weaves together, and with a kind of a combination. If you flowchart all the different ordinances and resolutions, they do come together and all land with the resolution in front of you. So the resolution in front of you actually effectively addresses all of the fees that we charge on a utility bill. And what we've attempted to do is give you a little information about who uses the program, how much foregone revenue it means to the various funds, and kind of how it works. And then we've updated the model and have some proposals for you that we think streamlines it, makes it a little more consistent, and also gives it room to grow that we think is useful to council. So it works based on the chart on table on page 30. It's a gross income based and the income qualified at 100%, 125%, and 150%. So the 100% is the lowest. It's the highest discount, or the lowest income, which receives the highest discount. About halfway down that page, the way that the system works right now, it's a little challenging from an administrative standpoint, that it was a flat fee, and then you have to apply that flat fee that creates a percentage, and it's flat fee by different base fees. So it's Sammy can explain it far better than I. It's a bit of a challenge.
Very complicated.
Yeah, and what it ends up doing is it creates low income rates for every single one of our utilities. So rather than it being, here's your bill, customer, and here is your percentage discount, instead, what a customer receives is they don't receive what they're told their fully loaded bill would be, and a shown discount. They receive an adjusted bill, and the adjusted bill goes through quite a bit of machinations with our utility billing system, and that Sammy manages, make sure it's all right. So what this proposes is simplifying that by saying, rather than having these flat fees based on the base, which then converts to a percentage, and creating all of these rates in the back end of our system every year, then whenever the rate changes, so does the discount rates. Those all have to be updated and changed, converting it instead to a percentage base. So eligible customers of this program would also get a bill for what the bill actually is. Then they would see their level of discount that they've been eligible for based on their income qualifying. Excuse me. It streamlines things a lot, and I think it's actually the visual of everybody knowing what discount they're receiving. And then the probably the biggest policy level change, most of it's administrative, but the biggest policy level change, there's two of them, and one is what would be a reduction in different levels of recipients. Currently, the way it works out, it changes slightly each year because of the weirder formula, but between 50 and 55%, I think last year was 55, that discount that they receive, 55% off the bill, so over half reduction in the bill. If you're in the 100% federal poverty level, and then 45%, then 35% goes down. We're proposing reducing that a little bit. I think if you look at utilities around the region and the state, I don't know of a single one that does a 50%. That's a hefty reduction. There's nothing wrong with that reduction. What I think, it ultimately is a matter of comfortable council is with the amount of discount relative to the amount of foregone revenue in each of the funds. It's not huge because there's not a giant amount of participation. I think this year is 23. But if more qualified, that would quickly rise, and it's a fairly significant discount. So the proposal, and those can be any of the feel free from it, because this really is a policy call. 35, 25, 15. 35% for the lowest level, and then 25%, and then 15%. And then the other policy piece that kind of goes hand in hand with that is a concept of, and it's on number 4, as a top of page 31, is to create a cap, to create a budget for it that we don't have now. It just, as many people qualify and qualify in those certain levels, they get, which is, again, fine. It hasn't been super extensive, but the idea being a funding cap equivalent to 1% of the estimated revenues for all of the different rates or different fee types we have. That ends up being just a little over 23,000 a year in this most current year, and the total credits this year was just under 16,000. So reducing the percentage rate would probably, first year at least, reduce that 15,000 down some. But as we talk about rate increases, fee increases, as Councilor Bowman mentioned, there may be more qualifying customers. And so trying to balance the kind of a policy cap to kind of manage the program, that was our idea, was to tag it at that 1%. And as you see that final bullet there in the middle of the page, that provides staff with a clear program limit with council approval required to extend the program beyond funding beyond the 1% cap. So if we were reaching the cap at any one point and we see we're reaching that 1% estimate, then we would just pause and come to council and say, hey, we've got more demand for this than our 1% policy anticipated. Do you want to raise that either always or just for that year? So it's a mechanism that gives council some ability to control kind of that the revenues leakage, I guess, of in our funds. And again, it's relatively small. So this probably isn't. I've been a part of these in other utilities where it's where you really do need to have really clear parameters, or it can really affect your rate modeling and what you end up receiving in your revenues for the funds.
Councilor Bowman?
Just out of curiosity, do we have any idea what the demographics are of the 23 participants we have? Are they families? Are they single people? Are they older folks?
Sammy may have some of that, but if you look at the table, over half of the 23 meet the 100%. So they are at the lowest, the lowest income qualifying number. I don't know if we keep statistics on kind of who qualifies at what levels in terms of the household size. I don't know that we have, 7 of those are 4-person families and 2 or 1.
Understood. I just thought it would be, if you had valuable context.
Yeah, I think the context that I think, that Sammy told me about that I think is the most kind of the high level value is that, approximately half of the program eligibility is at the 100% level, which is, as you look at that chart, that's the lowest level.
Okay, so that's people doing it very tough, but also some revenue leakage for us.
Yeah, and really
Okay.
the policy question is that balance. Yeah, and there really, again, there isn't a wrong answer. It's a policy. So we put the structure in place. Probably the 2 levers for this system are the percentages, of 35, 25, and 15. Is that right, or do you want to adjust those up or down? And then that 1%, is that a comfortable kind of administrative working cap, knowing that can be adjusted up? It just isn't adjusted up by staff. It's adjusted up, by council. And then in future budgets, we would actually budget that as an anticipated kind of program expense. So we track the leakage it's tracked here, but it would be tracked in our financial system, because we would actually take that 1%, and budget that as the limited income assistance funds.
And I take it to mean the cap would reset every fiscal year as well. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess my concern is that if that many people are that far below the poverty level, I'm not sure how good I feel about raising their bill at this point. And I know that it's a financial thing that we need to look at. But is there any way, is there any program to be able for citizens to pay more voluntarily on their bill to help subsidize our low income people? There's no way.
We
to
don't
do
currently
that.
have a program, and there are utilities that do that, you know, you round
think
up or
my
you do,
Specific
yeah,
power bill.
there's
to
a
have that.
variety of, yeah, you know, again, with our scale, our resources, our systems, you know, that could, that's up to you to direct us to develop something.
I mean, we don't want it to cost more than what the benefit would be. I understand the administrative costs.
You know, you know, when we're talking about, we have about, you know, 630 something total customers, residential, then you take about 90 off of that total for residential. So 540-ish residential customers, and half of the 23. So even say, you know, say 13 are at that level. You know, that's not a high participation rate in the program, which is really what we were, you know, kind of building up the ability for. I guess that's part of the question. Fewer number of people, more discount. You know, more people, maybe less of a per household discount. That's part of it too. And we really, right now, to me, it's the kind of the perfect time to be, you know, working on it. Is we don't have extreme pressures on those funds. So you'd want to get a system in place before you get to the point where you have pressures. So you have a structure that works policy wise. You know, and again, those you know, half off of a utility bill is a lot, and that's okay. I mean, that's you run the utilities, you get to decide. But that's, you know, from context, from my looking around, that's a generous amount, and ratepayers, you know, do pay, right? So these are rates that everyone pays in because it's using those rate revenues to, you know, to kind of make it whole. But it could be also in phases. You could do this year, and if from 55, you know, to 35 is not palatable, you can change those.
Lyman.
Yeah, it seems kind of like a double whammy. Not only are we raising rates, but then we're reducing, changing the formula. So not only are they paying higher rates, but then the discount that they get.
Now,
So I'm not going to vote in favor of this.
I agree with,
Do you have excuse me, I would like if you have a suggestion, if you want, if what you're saying is leave it the same, or do you have a suggestion in a different percentage?
I think it needs to be phased in more.
Or would you have a suggestion for a different percentage?
Don't.
Bowman?
I agree with what Councilors Smith and Lehman have said. I also feel that for now, it would be, especially in the economic climate in which everybody is grappling. People who have means are doing it difficult enough, but people who don't have means, it's doubly difficult for them. And Adam, I appreciate where you're coming from too. So don't think that I don't appreciate that half of the discussion, because I certainly do.
Nope, that's why it's a policy call, right? Exactly.
But I think for the moment, we should be mindful of the economic circumstance and in the times in which we live. And I think perhaps we should just leave it the way it is for now.
Mayor, if I could add, maybe the leave it is as it is for now. If the percentages are the primary sticking point, it would, and we're going into open enrollment for the program in like 2 weeks. If all the other simplification and administrative changes and all of that are amenable, and the desire to, maybe punt on it for a year, which is totally fine, there could be a modified motion that just retains the prior percentages, and then the rest of the resolution can take effect, because I think there is administrative value in what we put together, and we knew when we put together the percentages that that's a tough balance. So that's exactly what we expected, is to have it's tough conversations. So if there is a willingness to have the rest of the elements move forward, it could be as simple as, modifying the suggested motion to retain the prior percentages as presented.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Shot here. So I move to approve resolution 2025-09, a resolution adopting the policy criteria and assistance levels for the City of Coburg Limited Income Assistance Program as presented, except for the percentage levels of credit or reduction. Instead of going with the proposed percentages, we will stick with the current percentages.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Engebretson, and we have a second by Councilor Lehman to adopt resolution 2025, a resolution adopting the policy and criteria for limited income assistance, with keeping the percentage reduction at current levels. All those in favor? Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none. Resolution 2025-09, adopting the policy and criteria for limited income assistance passes unanimously. As amended.
Yes.
All right. Next agenda item is the well house on Stallings Lane bid award and contract. And we, in this instance, are acting as a contract review board.
Local Contract Review
Local
Board,
Contract
yes. I'll maybe give a couple highlights on that one, because I'm gonna mess you up a little bit on it,
Good.
but yeah.
Thanks so much there.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mr. Hanks will be presenting.
Thank you. So this one normally would be a wearing the hat of the Local Contract Review Board, which is the role of that council plays in bid awards. So that role is limited typically to, did the procurement process was it followed? Did it work right? Did it do everything that it was supposed to do? Did it hit the notices? Did it, leave the appeal periods and all of those things? It isn't a role of, negotiating with the bidder, the lowest responsible bidder, to say, well, that's weird, I want to reduce that a little bit. It's really process. The fly in the ointment for this particular one, we're also laying on you a question of, whether, irregardless of whether the process was followed and the award should be, was the most responsible, responsive bidder, it was really high. And it leaves our water projects and our water loan in a position that we weren't expecting as staff. And before awarding any of that, we want to make sure you're as clear as we are as to the implications of it being quite a bit higher of a bid award than we anticipated, and kind of looking at the non-bid costs that go along with this project really drive it up to be a substantial hit to the water fund. So that's why it's got an added piece. So it is a local review board. Ultimately, should you choose to award the bid, you're doing that with that hat on. But your council hat is that prudent given our funding, our water fund scenario and our water loan. So I've got, can I steal back the, we get the PowerPoint and I'll steal back the keyboard.
Could somebody move the television just a little bit closer? Thank you.
Okay. Oh, went away. I did that to you or not? You need it back?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Great.
All right. Okay. Ready to roll. So this is in the staff report. So the staff report contains kind of the information about the bid itself. But it quickly moves on to our water loan and okay, that's all right. I'll get going without it, not a problem. You know, and really kind of what we've laid out that started, you know, really in 2019 with this funding source. And it's been the reoccurring theme has been that projects have escalated that may, as we look backwards, that may have been a point of the last 20 or 30 years where we probably might look back and see that was the biggest spike in public contracting project costs that we've had, you know, at least 20 years. So it was great to get the funds. But right after the funds were secured, the economy got as weird as it's maybe been for pricing.
Open space.
Yeah, I'll
here.
get it back to its spot. Okay. So this is this recap is really, if we've done more with the water loans than just the water supply. There's been several other projects that have been paid for through the water loan, which is again started in 2019. It's 6.5 million total. 5.5 is the debt service, and there's a forgivable piece in there. What has transpired kind of with the water supply part of all of this, which was a multi-phase that we are, as you see here, there's 3 phases plus a pre-project phase, was acquiring the land on Stallings, then actually drilling the well, and drilling, casing, capping the well. Both of those things have been completed. And then where we're at is the 3rd phase, which is taking the water from the well into a building with piping, equipment, pumps, chlorination, all of the treatment and controls, the SCADA controls, and securing the building and access to the building, and taking, after it goes through the process part for treatment, then a pipe running it down to the front, because the building is in the back of, and the well, they're both at the back of the site, bringing that line all the way to the front of the property on Stallings. And then the final phase, which was planned to also fit within the water loan total, was going to then take that down Stallings turn left on Coburg and connect into our system. So the ultimate goal, obviously, of taking a well with water in it and actually connecting it to our distribution system. What we have tonight is an unfortunate thing where we're going to be short. We have enough to complete phase 2. It gets us, it gets the treatment building built, it gets all the equipment in it, gets the chlorination, gets the pumps, gets all that, and gets the line to the front of Stallings. But where we fall short is the ability then with that loan to get it to the system. Doubling down on that, where when we look at the total cost, not just the project bid cost of the bid was 1.334, I believe. I rounded up to account for change order and issues that are not uncommon. So it's kind of a, in my head at least, or in Brian and I's head, it's a kind of a not to exceed 1.5. We have a high number of items that are outside of that bid, and that's that 700,000. Those are the electrical and the controls are to be purchased by owner. That's 100,000, 25 to 50,000 in transformer plus electrical service to the site. We have Consor, which is the sub engineer that is specific to treatment piping facilities. We have over 100,000 left on that contract. And then we have about 150 left on the branch side of this contract to get it all the way done. So 700 includes what we have spent and what we have left to spend just in phase 2. So that means that phase 2 really is $2.2 million. And far exceeds even what was in the CIP that we presented to council in December and January. So we have a tough spot. The goal is to connect to really lay it all the way out there. We also, going backwards, we also had anticipated and hoped that the well would produce 300 to 350 gallons a minute. It produces about 160. So when you really look at all in, including the $1 million to get it connected to the system, we're talking about, over $4 million to get 160 gallons a minute to our system, 10 to 12% increase in supply. I guess from the staff standpoint, we're really asking the question of you is, do you agree with us that we should still move forward, exhaust all of the loan funds of 1.3 plus about 700,000 more of water fund balance, just fund balance, to get us functionally to the front of Stallings Lane, and then pause and figure out how we are going to get the funding and pay for the approximate $1 million that actually connects it to the system. So that's really the question we have in front of you. I have some kind of repeat slides from budgets that shows, the loan proceeds in the budget, 1.3 million. That's what's left on our budget. And then on the expense side, showing the 1.3 as capital. I highlighted also, this is the bummer part is, as you remember from budget committee meetings, is the water fund was the one out of the 4 that was the most stable. It was the one that we weren't as critically worried about. Carving out another 700 to finish this, knowing that we still have $1 million left to connect it, means that, this fund balance doesn't look near as rosy, or it won't look near as rosy if we move forward. The other highlighted amounts are the loan when we finish it out and it turns into debt service. Those are the other, just as a reminder. So this I'm just going to skip. That doesn't gain us enough. Oh, maybe that was my end. Okay. So staff put together 2 options in the recommendation section and recommends option 1. we still think it is worth moving forward on. And getting ourselves to the front of the property and be ready to make the final connection.
Thanks.
Yep. And I'll back up to the bidding part. There were only two bidders. They were both very specific municipal water system bidders. So it's not uncommon to not have a big array of bidders. And they were very close together, meaning that the components were differing, but the totals, because they put them in different places, a lot of their money, they categorize things differently when they bid. But the totals were very close together. So that indicates to both branch and staff that it's a solid bid price. That's what it costs. There has been some discussion about, what the steel and the tariffs and various things that are out of our control, what it may or may not have done, because that's still somewhat debatable about how that impacted the bids. But the other option is to decline the bid and say, we need to stop. We need to stop before we build this treatment building and before we run the line to the front of the property. That is an available decision of council. I think it has some short-term pros, right? We could finish the loan and say we're done. That reduces our debt service payments. This climate is very challenging to go get new money. That would be running the risk of closing something out, some available funds, which would then mean that we would need, much more money than just $1 million to make the connection. We would need, probably $3 million just to complete this if it happened in 2 years from now, because it would take at least a year to get money. And also likely a need to update the water master plan before we could get funded. So a lot of challenges ahead regardless. And this was the sobering thing for us as staff, was wildly different than what we had planned and really hoped. So our conversations at the staff level have been, kind of a gut check to say, okay, we need to be looking at what is probable, not what is possible. And I think where we've gotten stuck and where we're at this point is because we were collectively looking at what is possible. And it was possible, a year ago to meet this, to get it connected using the remainder of the water loans. We were even, a year ago thinking, well, there's this loop connector project for like 150 that maybe we have the chance of squeezing in. Now that's pretty silly because we can't even get the base part of the project done. So it's really weighing out, there's two bad, not bad. I mean, we get infrastructure put in place, but there's two not so great choices. And I don't have a third one that's a great one for you. We just have, I don't even know which one would be 1A, 1B, but that's the issue in front of us. Is we have a project that cost order of magnitude more than we anticipated, and it exhausts our funding without it benefiting the system functionally. The silver lining maybe is we do not currently have high demand or high pressures on our supply. The fact that the 107 acres is in a real slow kick the tires real estate mode right now probably benefits us. We aren't pushed. This has as much, and it originally had as much to do with redundancy as it did new supply. So it has value even with the reduction from 350 to 160. It has value as a redundant, separate aquifer, separated from our other ones, has a lot of value. The concept is a great concept. We just got struck with it costing, probably when we add everything all up, all said and done later, and we look backwards, it will cost us double what was anticipated. And that's, that just doesn't cut it. So I had one other piece that was a silver lining that I guess it's mostly the demand, that we do not have pressures on the demand right now. So putting it into the system isn't an urgent thing operationally. Of course, the flip side is any deferred infrastructure we do means the price tag goes up. So that's one of the driving pieces of staff's recommendation of moving forward, accepting the bid, getting it all done. Then as you see in the bullets, completely stopping, getting our loan squared away, giving you a full recap of where that all has, what we've produced with that loan, and then looking at what are our most critical needs for infrastructure moving forward, and where might there be funding to accomplish that.
Now, I would assume, and correct me if my assumption is correct, but if we have a finished product, we do the stallings well, house, have all of that in place, it would seem that it would put us in better stead to get more funding to complete, maybe whether it was a grant or whatever, but in the future to get money to move that.
I agree with that assessment. I think that's accurate. It's, we don't know, but I would lean that way as well. Yeah.
Mr. Lehman?
So with the grant funds that we had targeted for this
Grant, they're
loans, okay. And is it a use it or lose it? Are those loans still available? I mean, we have what's the estates?
Is it for Pioneer Valley?
It has the project list was established when the loan was awarded, and PV is not on that list, so we couldn't swap out for other projects. The loan has had 2 extensions, and so it is now due in March of 26, and I think it would be extremely hard pressed to extend that again. And again, extending it would probably diminish the available funds, diminish them relative to the increasing project costs. I mean,
loan interest rate on that?
I don't have the interest rate from me. It's probably between 3 and 4, I would bet.
It's a low interest rate, as I recall. And I want to remind everybody, those of you who've been on council for a while, you'll remember that when we first got this loan, we had very high expectations. We were going to complete the loop. We were going to build a new reservoir. We were going to, and as costs rapidly escalated, we broke this into phases deliberately because we knew that we could not eat all of that at once. And so we said, what's our most critical thing? And then one of the most critical portions at that point was drilling a new well, because both of our wells, our singular water supply, are within how many feet of each other, Brian? A couple hundred feet. So if one well was contaminated, it's only a matter of time until the other. Not that this new well could backfill everything, but it gives us a redundancy that we did not have.
Here, Bill, can I say something? I don't know how to raise my hand on a Zoom call.
Go for it.
Thanks. Adam, who was responsible for putting this estimate together, and how did they miss it by $700,000? I mean, am I right that we are $700,000 over budget on this well? And that the majority of the overruns have been since the well has been dug, and now the cost estimate for the well house and extension of the utility is $700,000 more than what was anticipated?
Yes and no. So the part of what the challenge is some of the estimates that we were using in the CIP are bid price. And there are what has been happening is the running totals of the engineering pre, during, and post, or wrap up, have not been captured well. So those have been ongoing, and we have been focused on the bid price. And that happened on the street side as well. And it happened, you know, I think a little bit with Pavilion in a slightly different flavor. But the other part is these estimates were, 6 months ago based on 30% drawings. As you get further in, you get regulatory answers that you don't have at the 30% drawings. This includes a fixed generator, though there are value engineering opportunities to reduce this to some degree. There are choices made as you go from a 30% set of plans to a 90 to 100% set that almost never go down, they go up. There were some fire turnaround. We had to increase the area that was originally designed so vehicles could turn around. The cost of electrical went up significantly. The technical cost, of Consor was a lot higher. So everything, it wasn't just the bid price being off. It's the totality of everything being much more expensive with it. But it's,
but not to interrupt, who did the estimates for this though? I mean, this is a significant increase. I understand what you're saying, right? But $700,000 on what turns out to be a $4 million project is way off. And my point is that this is exactly what Councillor Bowman was talking about, is that we're going to be revisiting this stuff if we continue to have these kinds of increases. That's why you build in contingencies in your budget to begin with. But I mean, this is crazy. And now we can't finish it on the loan that we were able to take out. Frankly, I'd like to know who put that bid together or put the estimate together and let them go, not use them again. Because if they're going to be that far off on this kind of thing, and they're that far off on these kinds of estimates in the future, how can we rely on this? How can we go out and get funding for these kind of capital projects? It's frustrating in light of what we've talked about earlier this evening to see you come in and say, oh gosh, guys, we have a $700,000 increase in the cost of a well that's not going to produce the kind of water that we expect it to. And I'm not jumping on your case. It's just, this is the kind of thing that we're going to see. If this is the kind of thing we're going to see in the future, then we've got bigger problems than what we've been talking about. That's a huge increase. I can understand $70,000 for the reasons that you just explained, maybe $100,000, but $700,000, somebody really screwed up bad. And I think we need to visit who actually was responsible for that.
So yeah, I'll take some of it. The bid, once we had the 90% plans, the engineer's estimate was within 10, the bid that came out was within about 10% of the engineer's estimate. So the bid estimate was not wrong. The bid estimate was within range. What we're talking about here is all of the things outside of the actual bid and construction. And those are a tremendous amount of costs that go in prior to, during the development of this. Things that were added, I think the fault, which, I figured that would be part of the conversation tonight. The fault is, the high level way to explain the fault is, trying to plan and budget for what's possible versus what's probable. And the idea is that the cost of engineering design, especially on an actual treatment facility versus like the operations building, that's a pretty standard building. That's different than a piece of infrastructure that's processing. It has Oregon Health Authority regulations. We have to put, there's a required eye wash station. And then when you're on a site, where does that go? Oh, it has to go into its own septic. It can't go out on the ground. So we have a septic for an emergency eye wash station. So there are a huge number of things that are the base gets figured out pretty early. The add-ons add up much more than a 5 or 10%. So the challenge to me, or the part that is on me, is that came, all of those changes and the estimates and the totality of this is coming now rather than 4, 5, 6 months ago. That could have likely been better understood, that it was going to go way up. I don't know that it would, ultimately say, what would you do 4 months ago? Would you stop and cut your losses at 300,000 or 400,000 of consulting and engineering and design work, or not? But yeah, the totality of the projects versus the out to bid component of a project is a core problem. That is a core problem on our side.
Due respect, I understand that, right? But you've hired some very talented, supposedly talented people to anticipate what those costs are going to be. You just said yourself, you've spent what, $400,000 in design and consulting, and those costs weren't anticipated to begin with. And again, I could understand $70,000, $100,000 maybe, but $700,000, somebody missed that really bad. And I know it's, at this point, water under the bridge, so to speak, but we can't continue to do that. Whoever we hired to come up with those estimates, we should not hire them again, because that was, and if it's our city engineer, then I think we need to revisit that, because that's way beyond reasonable. It's not even close. And anyway, I'll get off my soapbox here, but it's if we continue to have these kinds of overruns, we're going to have serious problems into the future. And all the budget discussion that we had earlier this evening, you could just throw in the trash can, because it's going to be significantly higher than what you're talking about. We have to control these costs better. I guess maybe that's the bottom line. And if that means hiring different consultants to come up with the initial estimates, then that's what we need to do. But those costs that you just outlined and you've talked about should have been anticipated to begin with.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all, but I want to clarify where I think the issue is or was. Not so much that no one anticipated those costs were going to occur or that they were overruns, as much as the miscommunication or awareness of how we captured those into our discussions about the cost. So I think those costs were not necessarily predetermined, but not unexpected, but somehow the communication didn't translate into our discussions about the costs. And all of a sudden we realized we should have seen those costs coming down the road. Not that the costs were overruns, costs were there, just it didn't get picked up in the observation that those costs were there. Is that a better clarification than that they were cost overruns?
I appreciate that. That's a really good summary, and it is both things, Councillor Wells, and your statement. It is really a combination of those. There were estimates from as early as recently as 4 months ago that really rose, but probably the through line to all of this stuff, and I very much agree with Councillor Wells' statements, most of them. That we can't keep doing this, and that is probably the number one takeaway, is what you just summarized, and I appreciate how you summarized it. It was really good. That's what we struggled with. Is those go, well, of course they have. Consor has a sub bill of that, and has a bill, and some of it's timing of when they happen, and how do we attribute it? Do we attribute it to the well drilling? Do we attribute it to the well, to the well house? Some of those expenses can, are where you want to attribute them to. The other thing to point out in the broader context is we are we made a decision, I think it was stated in a council meeting, we made a decision to design for this facility that we're talking about now, phase 2, to be sized to take on well number 4, right? To an additional well on the property. So all of the piping, all of the treatment facilities, all the chlorination, all the backup generator stuff, all the pumps, everything is designed to be it's a preload for connecting a 4th well, because as you recall from our consort capacity study, 2030, 2031, we have a significant need for more supply as modeled. And so the idea of this was that it would be sized for that. If we sized it for the, it was sized for 350 gallons a minute times 2. And, if we sized it for, and did this, there's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking that could be had. We didn't have that information, but that's an attribute of this project, that actually when well number 4, if and when well number 4 gets drilled, the cost structure is significantly different. It's not apples and oranges, because the vast majority of that facility to bring that to the system has been, will have been pre-purchased and installed.
Is there any danger of us losing water rights if we don't bring it to a certain completion stage?
Yes.
So if we bring it to the front of Stallings Lane, does that satisfy our water rights for a period of time that we wouldn't lose water rights because it's not being used? Is there going to be a problem with that?
I don't have a definitive answer for you on the nuances of that question. We've talked about it as staff preliminarily. Progress towards, water rights is as long as you're showing progress towards use, right? If you stall out, I would have to ask with the regulators to say what is the duration of stalling out before you run that risk. You ultimately do run that risk with either scenario. I think you're less likely to run that risk with moving forward. Because you are making progress, that's, it's resetting the clock, constantly of that water right. But that is, I don't have a definitive answer about how much more risk there is on one option versus, moving forward versus not on the water rights component.
I have one more question in that. I assume that if we bring it to Stallings Lane, the infrastructure is there, so that is actually potable water. If we stop now, then is it water that is not potable?
Correct. It's not treated water, right?
So if
We don't have any way to get it from the wellhead anywhere.
So if we bring it to Stallings Lane in a major emergency, worst case scenario, would there be any way to tap into that supply to provide emergency potable water, even though it wouldn't run through the system? I'm thinking filling water jugs, filling water tanks.
Not really. No, this is like a transmission line on a distribution line.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
Thank you. Bowman?
I'll be brief. Let me associate myself with the remarks made by Councillor Wells, Councillor Lehman, Councillor Smith. All very good points. And Administrator Hinks, I know it sounded like we were beating up on you a little bit. Please rest assured it's not personal criticism. It's just, it's a big sort of ouch moment for the city budget that, frankly, I think part of it was unforeseen and parts of it could have been avoided. It's neither here nor there at this point, but it is a big ouch for the city budget. I understand what other folks have said about bringing the project to completion. Water rights are concerned, but either way, it's not a very good option. And hopefully we can not repeat the same circumstances in the future, because it is a big it is a big ouch. It's bigger than the Pavilion Park project by quite a bit.
Yes.
And yeah,
If we can get assurance that we won't lose the water rights because it's stalling on Stalling Lane, but it would seem to me that one way of looking at this is to say we built the infrastructure for a future need. It's not an immediate need. So we can stop the project at this point in time. And when we can pick it up again, we've got the infrastructure in place to move forward on it. Almost seems like we earlier said that if you completed the project, you might be in a better position to get another loan down the road. It would seem to me the opposite, that if you have an unfinished project, that might be a higher priority for getting a new loan down the road.
It still would be an unfinished project, right? So it's just less of an unfinished project because there's be $1 million left to get it connected. So I think that was my take is I think in the climate that we're in, it's far more likely to obtain a $1 million, $2 million loan, or I doubt grant, but loan to complete it than it would be to not do this phase, have that $1 million, $2 million plus, what's left, all of this project, and it roll up over 12, 24, 36 months to being a much larger amount where we're then chasing $5.5 million again, the same amount that we've tried.
Like your recommendation would be go ahead and finish the project and
Yes.
swallow it.
Yes. I think finding money is going to be hard. And finding money, the part where this is singularly different than our prior budget conversations today is that this is in the water fund. This is a water utility. The only connection that it has to the general fund is the loans that in one element are backed by the full faith and credit of the city. And those have general fund. That's the general fund. So I worry that if we don't move forward and limit the connection to roughly $1 million and instead have to be searching for much, much more, we run the risk of not being able to get it. Just people saying, no, you don't have the fund balances in your general fund to even be qualified for the loan, even if there was a program that we were eligible for, that we aren't qualified financially with our audits and our credit rating and all of that. So then we're out. And I don't know where we would go for funding, after that. And we have, an existing loan that's on its way to going away this last year. But regardless of whether we say yes or no to this last phase, we still have, it'll be 140,000-ish a year debt service for the portion of the loan that we've already received disbursements. We would, I don't know what all the mechanisms for through Business Oregon would be to end it early and what other fees. We would have a little bit less of the accrued interest payment. We would save a little there. We would then have a lesser debt service. But when we went out again, it's not like the last time when it was planned to have no debt service by the time this debt service started. We would be layering a second set of debt. So it's challenging to get it with our general fund condition, and it's challenging to get it when we already have fresh debt in the water fund.
So utilizing all of the loan capacity that we have, we're still having to come up with $1 million, a funding solution of approximately $1 million.
For this project, just to clarify, so we have, aside from the bid, we have the project total is about 2.2, right? So we've got the bid itself is going to, if we award the bid, that exhausts our loan, right? And so anything else that we have to finish phase 2 and then also phase 3 to actually connect it is not, we don't have funding for unless we take out of fund balance. And that's another calculations, to be done is what is our fund balance, how bad would that be to just eat it and borrow it from ourselves, right? From fund balance. What I'm saying is we have $500,000 to $700,000 in this coming fiscal year that we would have to take out of fund balance in order to finish phase 2. That would exhaust the loan plus 500,000 to 700,000. I just put 700,000.
But to finish phase 3, which gets it operational,
Another $1 million, right? Correct. Yes.
and that would be in which fiscal year?
That would definitely not be in this coming fiscal year. Yeah, that would be a TBD. And that amount, I think, the budgeted amount there was the 6 months ago number was 850. And I think, that's probably, it's a much more straightforward project. It's pipe in the ground. It's cutting asphalt, putting pipe down and making connections. That one has very little variables. The project we're talking about tonight that has many, many more variables. It is a highly regulated system with a whole lot of specialties in it. So being able to be more clear and solid on that $1 million is primarily because it's a pipe in the ground, linear feet.
So
bid.
what we're really talking about tonight is that additional, number one, approving a contract, and then also approving an additional 700,000 out of existing funds, complete phase 2.
Yeah, all you're doing tonight is voting on awarding the bid, but the rest of the bullets really speak to what goes along with that decision. And so the rest of those don't happen tonight, but they are ultimately need to happen.
We need to be thinking about those.
Right. And really the most straightforward, really the only, solution is that it's a very simple budget adjustment to come in July, which would be to the revenue side is the same. The expense side is 700,000 more, so it's instead of 1.3 million in the capital expense, it's 2 million in the capital expense, and it's 700,000 less in the ending fund balance. You just take it, you just appropriate it. It will require a supplemental. It will require, it requires a bunch of rigmarole. And yeah, this is, I guess the heat is warranted, right? It shouldn't come to you this way. So we will be fixing it. These won't happen this way. Regardless of where we can point at blame. The ultimate answer is, as I think Councilor Lehman put it really well, is we missed the communication at the very least. We missed the communication, and different people in the room and in our work day to day, we were kind of apples and oranges. We were missing each other on the totality of things. And, that's ultimately on me in front of you saying that this shouldn't be in front of you like this. I think the part about whether we would have been able to squeeze in the third piece, the connection, that probably was, always on the edge. Again, knowing what we know now, it makes it a little easier to say that. We were still hopeful that we could fit that in. But the fact that we're using, or that we're proposing and using fund balance, if we look at the fund balance, of that fund, it's over 3 million. That and there's revenues annually of 1.1 million. That is not a death knell to the fund at all. It is not the trajectory we were hoping for, not the trajectory that allowed us to have relatively benign rate increase. That changes some of those conversations later about what's the appropriate rate model that we need to adopt to adjust. But we knew we were needing to do this after this project anyway, is what is actually next. We have to update the water master plan. What do we actually need? Do we need storage? Do we need more supply? And the less related to the specifics of this project, but related to the master plan and related to this whole financing thing and revenue, is
the 2014 or 2016 master plan. I think I put 26. I saw it when I was reading it. This 2016 master plan was based on 2014 data, both on the project expenses originally. Those have been, of course, adjusted up as they go. But most importantly, I think to keep in mind is they were based on population growth numbers that were wildly different than what occurred. And when you do that, you are estimating a whole different revenue picture. When you can say, hey, it's, you know, our base fee times, you know, 1,500 customer count instead of 630 customer count, that's a big difference. And that's been 6, 8, 9 years of that not matching. In this way, it's similar to the general fund conversation, is the revenues haven't matched the modeling from that original thing. So we've known we have to update the master plan. There are grant opportunities actually that we're in line to apply for that might accomplish that.
You have a question?
Maybe more of a comment. Are we
Okay.
ready for those or any
So,
discussion or?
Yeah,
or-
I'm watching time and
Yeah.
thinking, we're getting kind of late here. We need to figure out what we're doing.
Yeah, I think, you know, in looking at the couple of options, to me, it seems like if we went with option 2, which is to say we stop at phase, what are we trying to do? Phase 3 right now? We
Two.
stop at phase 2. I think, you know, the costs are only likely to continue to go up, you know, present value of money concept. The phase 3 is probably only going to get more expensive from today forward. So I tend to lean toward, we have a loan that will cover quite a bit of the phase 3. So I'm going to just say that I think that's probably the better option of the two. And then as far as the budget issue, yeah, I did budgeting for about 10 years. So I know what it's like to be in the hot seat too. And I also know how frustrating it is when budgets don't turn out like we thought they would. In this case, I think I agree with what everybody said, and I think Councilor Lehman's right. The issue sounds to me more like an issue of miscommunicating, let's call it that, on where the design and engineering costs were in your total. So, you know, the one thing I would just say is, hopefully we have some budget templates that we've been developing. That's what I always used when I did budgets, was use a template, so I didn't have to remember all the components every time. And throw that out, that, you know, including those categories in a template that you use over and over again. Sorry if I'm explaining something
No,
that you've
no.
already thought of and you've probably
No,
already
it's-
done that, but
No, I appreciate it.
something that's simple like that can really save a lot of headaches. Hopefully going forward, we'll be a little bit more aware and have a place, a line item in our budget template where we would put those kind of costs. And then instead of perhaps missing that or thinking it was in with the bid number, oh no, it wasn't, if we have that laid out, then the only problem will still be to try to estimate costs, and those issues never go away. But
Councilor Lehman.
So,
I will call for a vote.
so on option 1, the fourth bullet there, suspending all new capital project expenditures, that would be the equivalent of $700,000.
To be after what we're talking about, which is the bid.
To use the $700,000 necessary.
Yep. And-
We'd have to suspend new capital project that's already in the budget to the equivalent of 700,000. So you'd have to supplemental budget to change that.
The supplemental would be to add 700,000 to the capital expense item and remove 700,000 from the fund balance,
Okay.
and then
All from the
stop.
fund balance.
Correct.
But then you still say you're going to suspend all future.
Yeah.
Capital
We stop.
projects.
Yep.
To the tune of 700,000.
Just stop because we don't have any more capital funds. I mean, just stop, period. In the water fund.
Project.
In the water fund and the water projects.
And what ones are in the budget that would be stopped?
There are none currently
There
in
are
this
none
coming
currently.
fiscal.
Okay.
What we'd be looking at is a really a redo of the CIP and, you know, a deep, that we knew was coming, as a deep dive into the water master plan, to figure out what we need, what's the priority, and when do we have to do it and versus when we should do it. Sometimes those are the same, sometimes they're different. You know, there's regulatory things, there's growth predictions, there's pressures, you know, all of those things. And so that the point of that bullet was to ensure that we're maximizing this option one is maximizing that loan, is grabbing all of what's been awarded, and spending what the minimal amount that we are estimated of 700,000. If it's less, it's less. That it takes to complete phase 2, which gets the pipe to the front of the property line, and then we stop. And we stop on capital, and which is the only way to not stop on capital would be spending more fund balance. So it's a natural to stop. I was kind of reiterating and making was hopefully an obvious point, but wanted to be explicit.
I think we should probably vote.
I'm ready to make a
Well,
motion.
I am ready to vote because we do need to move this along.
May I make a motion?
Yes, you may.
I move to accept the bid and award the City of Coburg Stallings Lane Well House project to HP Civil Inc. in the amount of $1,332,780 as the responsible and responsive low bidder as reviewed and determined by the City of Coburg, contract city engineer, and authorize the city administrator to execute the project contract and to implement recommendation option number 1 as presented.
We have a motion by Counselor Lehman. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
By Counselor Engebretson. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Hearing none.
I must respectfully dissent.
No, so you're voting no?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So we have,
I didn't catch.
Mayor Bell, I'm sorry, my mute was off. I am not in favor of that as well.
okay, so we have 2 against and we have
Or in favor.
4 in favor. So the motion passes. Thank you. That is difficult, and I appreciate all of the conversation. We do have a time constraint upon us here. We will adjourn this meeting at 8:30 unless we have an extension of 30 minutes.
I would request to adjourn because I have medication that I need to
Well,
take.
okay, so we have one request to adjourn, leaving on the table the broadband equity access and deployment city endorsement. And we still have 10 minutes.
Oh, we can do
So
that in
if you
10
wanna
minutes.
Go ahead and get that going. The next agenda item is a request for the city to endorse 2 applications as members of the Regional Fiber Consortium. And Mr. Hanks will give us a quick staff report on that, please.
Yes, I'll give a brief one. This is through Jake Callister is the coordinator through LCOG of the Regional Fiber Consortium. So he has monitoring this extensively for all members of the consortium that we are. And the concept is supporting both applicants, both DFN and HIAC, in their application through the Oregon Broadband Office for these federal funds, these BEAD funds. And in the materials that Jake provided us, you know, what is the BEAD program? What are the proposals? And it really is it's equity in access to broadband in short. And these two entities that are applying have been vetted through the Regional Fiber Consortium that we're a member of. And so I think both Mayor and I felt comfortable at least putting that forward as a very safe and smart support for their application as they move through the gauntlet. I did hear today that the BEAD review of applications is going to be temporarily paused, which is a common theme in federal funding. So I think it's still valuable if there is interest to still approve the mayor to sign these letters on the behalf of the council in total, and we will forward them along and hope that they're useful. If not, I guess they go in the shredder. Yeah.
This has come before the MPC committee, and I probably, have you heard about it at Lane Act also? Did it come there?
Heard about it yet?
No. It's to take broadband to underserved areas, and it is certainly needed. I think that became highly evident during the COVID epidemic or pandemic or whatever we want to call it, but it hasn't gone away. Is there any council discussion on this? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
I move to endorse the BEAD letters of support on behalf of the council for both Douglas Fastnet and Hayek.
I have a motion by Councillor Bowman. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
By Councillor Myers. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? None. The motion passes 6-0. The administrative monthly report was in our packet. Are there any questions on that?
I have several, so I'd like to postpone accepting it without more conversation.
There, you don't have to accept the administrative report, but so if you
Have an
have,
opportunity to talk about it later then.
and if you have specific questions, you could
Can I ask them?
address them to Mr. Hanks, maybe call or set up an appointment or email specific questions, and then he will share those with us as appropriate. Financial report. Were there any questions on the financial report? We've talked a lot about finances this meeting.
There will be budget transfer in June for some slight, if you look at the end where the budgetary compliance is, there are some that are right up on the edge of 100%. So we'll be bringing forward some budget transfer
This meeting.
for next meeting.
And then we all need to review, Sammy, you can help me out here on this, the mandatory reporter information.
Yeah, sure. That's just your annual reminder. It normally comes with the child abuse awareness proclamation, but I missed it. So
Okay,
the House bill passed, I think it was 2 years ago. So it was kind of gray whether elected officials were mandatory
Yes.
reporters. It is no longer gray. It's black and white. You are mandatory reporters. They have great classes and stuff at League of Oregon Cities if you have any questions.
okay. Well, we sort of buzzed through that, and I'm not even going to ask for liaison updates or council comments. I think we've all had a lot of comments tonight, and we'll hold on those liaison updates until next meeting. So having said all of that, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:27. We made our 8:30 deadline.